Welcome to DevReady Podcast, where we're helping non-techs build better tech. Today we're joined by Tim Bishop. He's a man of many hats. He is the CEO, founder of Next Level Group, all about high-performance teams, organisations. Also founder of On Mission, which is a platform-based play, and I'll let Tim dive into a little bit of that. Ex-military, army officer. Love to talk a bit about that today. So there's plenty to get into, and I'm sure there's plenty for listeners to take away. So Tim, thanks for joining us.
Hey mate, yeah, really. I know we dived into a pretty big chat before we got on, but it's awesome to meet you guys. It's been fun, even just with 10 minutes time. Yeah,
It has.
so
It's been
appreciate.
disappeared 10 minutes.
It's
Yeah,
about
man.
15 in.
Give it a few more hours, we'll be there.
So for the audience, just tell them a little bit about you, your background. Obviously, spent a bit of time, and you grew up in Papua New Guinea. You mentioned. Tell us a bit about your background, your history, and what brings you to Next Level Group now.
Man, that's simple questions with not simple answers, I think.
Oh, I can imagine.
Man, it feels like a bit like a Marvel movie, and it's full of arcs. But yeah, just for the listeners, 35, got a beautiful boy, 2 years old. Name's Atlas. I've got a beautiful partner. I think she's beautiful. And I grew up in Papua New Guinea. But if I go back to the start, grew up in Papua New Guinea. Come out of an engineering-based family.
hmm
Mother heavily worked in coaching, consulting, and a little bit of psychology. And then my father was an engineer by trade, but built a company over there that looked after the mines and villages. And so you could say that I was influenced very early on service, which kind of pushed me into kind of wanting to join the military, but I wasn't actually the fittest kid around. So a lot of people don't realize that when they meet me in person, they go, "Oh, you've always been really fit and crazy." I said, "No, I'm like the converted smoker. Like I was like 110 at 5'8" in high school, and I was the Michelin Man. So I don't know anyone who knows who the Michelin Man is, but that was me. So
Yeah.
decided to turn my life around really quickly, and out of high school went straight into Adford Duntroon, which is like our military college. Got my degree in information systems and a few other things, and then got the amazing privilege of serving and looking after soldiers, which is really where the business and the dream kind of came from. But I joined the military because my family went into serious financial distress. My father got there was an attempted murder on his life, which was really interesting,
Oh
and
wow.
he got stabbed and attempted to be shot, and he had to flee the country and actually get out of there, which was really shit. But we realized that caused a huge amount of stress in the family unit, and I just went, well, maybe I can do something that doesn't put any stress on my mum and dad. So I thought, hey, I'll join the army. My dad's like, that sounds awesome. My mum's like, that's fucking awful. So
Must be worrying about you every day. Yeah, I
yes,
can
she's right
imagine.
there every day. But you know what? I honestly say this from by my heart. It was like the best thing I ever did. I miss it every day. I don't miss the bullshit or the bureaucracy, but I do miss that kind of. It's very hard. Anyone who's been in those environments will get it, and anyone who's observing will only ever wonder. But I can only say it is like this insane connection and community. I wouldn't call it camaraderie. That's too close to like a bit of a Russian lingo there, but it's there's no comrades in this joint, but it was definitely a place where I was forged, and I started to learn a lot about who I was and who I really wasn't. So
Mm.
I ended up going through a process with a couple of friends where I wanted to go through selection and special forces, and then after losing a few mates on deployment, and I'm a nerd. I'm a super nerd. I was like, there's actually no respawn involved in this video game. I don't like it. And I'm really not enjoying the role-playing game kind of features. I'm not picking up the items that I like, and I'm not becoming the man I want to be. So that's actually the comedic angle I took. I went, I really want to enjoy what I'm doing. And the stuff that I really enjoy is actually developing capability, developing people.
Mhm.
And I had a knack for it. I got a lot of feedback from my seniors who said, you're an exceptionally good leader at what you're doing. And one of them, for better or worse, who's no longer there, I won't mention his name, but he gave me the push and said, you're a wasted asset. You need to get out. You've got a really knack for lighting fires in people and getting them focused. And I went, I don't know what the fuck you're saying. And that's great to know. So I took a year off and I never came back. And that's when I realized I needed to make money. So I started a company and then built it. And I actually sold it for a small penny, which was enough to keep me through and keep me alive. I think that was luck, by the way. If anyone asks me how the hell you built a business in your first 2 years of being on the streets and then selling it, don't ask. I don't know. I just did it. It was just people buy. I mean, at the end of the day, you can say people buy great products, but people buy great products and services that are extensions of personalities and people they really like.
Agree with that.
Yeah, and I fell in love with people. I fell in love with helping people and serving people. And then I joined forces with a bunch of guys where we built a company. It was based out of Jakarta in Australia, called Big Change. It's doing incredibly well. I was a co-founder there, and I was the key strategist for all their military stuff. And then decided that I really loved the Next Level, which was the company I started at the same time. And we were trying to merge it, but it wasn't going to fit the context of where they were going. They were doing very heavy consulting within, you could say, manufacturing and streamlining, and it wasn't my jam. So I said, guys, I'm out. I'm going to sell out. And then I focused on Next Level. We grew it to an extremely large community, and I use that word specifically because it was all around building people. And we'd pull in a couple of hundred students every few months, train them, get them back out in the street to lead. And we were embedding them inside organizations and companies. So those companies and organizations would come back to us and say, hey, you've transformed this person. What the hell did you do? And we went, well, that person's particular character and history is their curriculum. So we can't tell you what we did because it's unique to them. And they found that really interesting. So we then joined up and did some work with some companies across Australia, so small and large. And then that's when it dawned on me that I can't be a one-man army. We grew our team to a solid 12 staff up until 2019. We started developing the platform, which is now on mission. It was actually originally called BOSS, BOSS, which was Battle Operating Success System, which is a bit of a play. Anyone who's military will go, oh, that's such a cheesy thing. But anyone who's not military will go, oh, that's kind of cool. Because in the military, they have these things called battle operating systems. So they're actually categories within the company or the organization of how you deploy assets. So infantry and armored BOS. And I mean, this is jargon, but anyone who is in that environment will get it. It's just a way of isolating a particular capability. So I went, oh, people want to succeed. So why don't we call it Battle Operating Success System? Like, how do we just help people succeed? So we built that, and then eventually we changed the name and pivoted. And I can tell you now, anyone who's building tech, be careful when you pivot. It's very expensive. It's so expensive, it's not funny. So we then got through to 2019, and I can actually say this without any sort of emotional pull now, we nearly tanked because COVID hit us. We had a lot of big relationships throughout the US. We're a very heavy face-to-face company, even though you've got technology and you can facilitate across time and space. A lot of the clients we were working with know that, but they want the time with you as a facilitator and a coach. They want you in their space. As you guys know, it's very different to, when you watch a sports game versus being in the arena, it's a totally different feeling. So they wanted that with us. And so we had to pivot very quickly to doing this kind of facilitation through technology and also not being able to do face-to-face overseas. So we had to pull back a lot of our US and Canadian clients. And then we went really heavy into Brisbane and Sydney and Melbourne to look after those clients. And as you guys know, I mean, it smashed a lot of businesses. So we actually had to pause a lot of our income for nearly 6 to 9 months because these guys were going to go under because of just how shit things were. Like, we're talking logistics companies, shipping groups, we're talking financial companies, even health and fitness organizations, gym chains, online. It was a mix. So we work across multiple industries. The only industry we don't touch really is hospitality, because our specialty is in scaling, growing, and exiting clients. So that was our strength, and we needed to look after them. So Ross and I and a few other team members tightened our belts and just took a deep breath and said, we better eat our discipline and get some mee goreng noodles, and we buckled up and we did really well. So we came out, the clients I'd say all of our clients have come out and they're doing really well. And it sounds like a bit of a bullshit statement, but I always say to people, it's either bullshit or you're good at what you do, but we usually double and triple our clients within 2-3 years. Like, we're very good at what we do. But it's only because we love developing and growing people, and then the systems come in later. So that leads us to here. And
there's a bit in that, right? So just a little bit to unpack.
Yeah, I didn't know how far you wanted me to go.
Quite a bit of information there.
It's a good summary.
Yeah, very good summary.
Yeah.
I'll pause you there a little bit. A couple of things that intrigued me along the conversation were the uniqueness you put on the person through who you engage with, and you mentioned you bring in students, a couple hundred or so, and you might make a unique program for them. How do you go about that at a scale level? Because I find that might be a little bit challenging, but what is that sort of secret sauce that you think about to understand the person, the personality? We all have different personality traits, types, things that might impact us, our belief systems. There's a number of different areas there. How do you consider all that when looking to grow a person, move a person forward?
Man, there's a lot in that. That's a really good question, dude. So the best way to, so I'll take a step back. We have to, when I say we, my partners and I and any of the other coaches that we partner with or work with take a very, we take a very serious approach, and I say serious with serious play. So you'll tell that my demeanor is quite playful with what I do, but I take everything we do with sincerity, and existentially it's really important. So when you start interacting with an individual or a group of individuals, the first base principle that we're looking at there is, number one, all these individuals want to be better. So that's the assumption that we make. Now, we actually ask that. Do they actually want to aspire to being great at who they are and what they do, both in a professional and a personal sense?
Good question.
And that's something that's overtly something we ask. And so I'll give you a bit of I'll give you a story whilst unpacking what you've asked, because fundamentally the core belief we would have is that everyone's at their edge. Everyone's trying to work out what they need to do next. And it's bullshit if anyone knows otherwise. So then the next question would be then, well, how the hell would you know? And I go, I don't. But what I do know is that if you don't have structure or strategy, you're going to fail. And so people need, like, we call it, as a simple way to categorize it for anyone who's listening, it's like the big five. Like, there's these big five things, not big five and the personality traits within psychology, but big five as what are these big five that everyone needs? And if you don't have them, you're actually going to struggle. Number one is, and it sounds like a cliche, but I want to use it from its deep context of etymology, where it comes from and what it means. So number one is vision. Like, this taps into a passion of mine. I'm working with a guy who's overseas as a Canadian professor. He's an amazing man. I'll do a shout out to him. A brilliant gentleman that everyone should definitely look up and hook into. So a lot of people have heard of Jordan Peterson. But another gentleman that is as equal to him and just an amazing vessel of information, granted knowledge, is a gentleman by the name of John Vervaeke. And yeah, a brilliant man, brilliant mind, starting to take off very quickly. So John Vervaeke, he and I have been interacting for a couple of years on this exact thing, which is, how do you help people aspire to who they could be in a world that is constantly changing, shifting, and quite chaotic? And so number one, if we go back to the big five, is just for the listeners, it's like, do you have a clear vision for who you want to become? And that's really difficult. Like that, but that also includes the company. So we use the same set of principles with an organization. And guys, pause me at any stage that this gets a little bit too rabbit holey, but this is kind of the work. This is the work we do. So I'm not sharing too much IP.
In terms of what intrigues me is, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I'm just trying to distill some of the information that you're sending here. What one of the stats was 2/3 of the top 500 CEOs are all military / some sort of defense background. Now, structure and strategy are 2 points that you put on. I imagine they're two areas that you dig in pretty heavily when you're in the army forces, etc. Yeah. So quite keen to dig in on that and understand and unpack that. So hence, keep going through the vision side, I think.
Yeah, mate. So maybe the easiest way to explain this is you can imagine maybe a triad. So if everyone can visually imagine like just a three-corner, like just triangle, you've got, at any one stage, most people are employed or work for someone. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, not everyone can try to build their own thing, and neither they shouldn't. Like, it would just become a shit show. Like, what you can do is either become an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur, which means bring your best inside a company and build something really awesome with some awesome other people. It's way more fun. Like, it's so much more fun to be able to be part of something that's really cool, which is that first step, which is vision. Like, what's the vision for what you want to do? And are you actually following it? And of course, that's going to expose a whole bunch of problems like, where am I? Where do I want to be? You know, and this is this constant theme of most people haven't had time or stopped or been given the strategy and the structure to convert to reality right now into action, their vision. So it stays as this really highfalutin bullshit category and concept that sits high in the eye. And this is why companies are going, well, this is our vision, these are our values. But the biggest challenge they've always had is, how do I convert this really highly important, significant thing that we've identified into something that's integrated and in real time? So that's the problem we solve as a company. Now, and we're trying to solve it at scale. Yes, that's a huge problem. And this is a problem that companies want to solve because, you know, this whole great recession and the great, you know, resignation, all this kind of stuff, you can no longer just buy people, because people they intrinsically want to belong. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves. They want to know that they're impacting. They want to enjoy what they're doing. And I mean, and forgive me, guys, like, I've got hardcore ADHD, so if I start spitting off different topics, I'm going to stay with category 1 of vision.
Yes.
But I want to just quickly bring over here that there's only 3 things that people really want when creating a meaningful existence. And that's relationships, it's an aspiration, relationships, and occupation. That's it. So quality of relationships. Am I occupied with something that's meaningful in what I'm doing? Have I got the right relationships I want? And am I aspiring to who I could be? Those 3 elements are the 3 critical things that people need to have. And if they're not being met, they're going to move. And so that's why the vision is it's not just a thing that you hear a lot of coaches and companies going after. It's really the Northern Star of, like, and I mean, the star idea is really important because there's many stars you could follow, but if you try to follow too many, you're going to become a no one, and you're going to destroy your company. You're not going to have a clear idea. And the vision is not also, like, probably to give a definition to your audience, there's plenty of definitions on how you would define vision, but the vision is not what you see, it's how you see.
Okay.
How you see the future, how you see the direction, how you see where we're moving to, how you see how we help. Yep, got it.
So this comes into this beautiful science of cognitive science and, you know, action and motivation and direction and we're self-organizing systems. When you all, like, as an example, anyone knows this. If someone wants to go somewhere, they go, well, I'm going to go train, I'm going to get fit, I'm going to eat well. All those little micro tasks or actions, they all nest under one major concept. And if you ask them, they go, I want to be a fucking awesome human being. Cool. That's part of the vision. That's actually part of it. So if you have a company and then you say, our vision, I'll give you an example of an organization, and guess what they do? This company grew from 2 to 15 million with us in 3 to 4 years. Their vision is to become who you want to be.
Jim?
To become who you want to be.
They're a property development group. It's crazy. We've got another one. I'll give you another one. To be your second family.
This can be anything.
These guys, they went from 4 locations to 15.
Yeah.
And they're still smashing it. They did really well through COVID. They did it. They're a gym chain. And the founder was like, man, even if you've got a good family, I want to be your second family. You got a shit family, you're going to be my second family. And it's because I know I'm hanging on this because I don't want to just go, here are the big 5. Here's this. It's like, when you actually get this is game changing. Like, and it's hard because you're trying to make, especially with what you guys are doing, you know, you've got a vision for what your podcast is and the business, but you've agreed on it, you're sharing it, you're interacting, it's inspired others. I've joined it, like, you know, I'm part of it in some shape, way, manner, or form. But then the next big 5 that people need to look at is planning. They suck. Most people planning. Like, the ability to understand that a product is but a byproduct of its process. And process is structure and strategy integrated in real time. So if you have a vision, but you don't know how to plan, you're going to become part of someone else's plan. And this is the challenge that people go, I'm just going to join forces with this thing because I have no clue what I'm doing and where I'm going, which is, hey, that was me. I joined the army. I was like, fuck, that's a great vision. Be all you can be, wear the greens, get mean, kick doors in, meet interesting people. Hopefully you don't have to kill them. You know, like it's all that jazz, you know? And I didn't have to, which I'm really grateful for. It's actually the really stupid question I always get. Did you kill someone? I'm like, well, no, thank God I didn't have to do that. But, you know, the best gift from being in the military was that we shouldn't start wars. You know, like
who does it really serve, right? So let's not go there. But anyway,
yeah. So that's kind of like, you can imagine like a bit of a hierarchy around. Okay, we've got the vision, and then we go into planning. Those two elements can be an absolute game changer just for a small team, large team, or an organization. And I can tell you with absolute love, even large, really awesome organizations like Big Four consulting firms, they drum on this, but a lot of their teams suck at it. Because it's a personal process as well as a company process.
Agree.
And if
100% agree.
If you've got a company that's doing it with individuals that don't know how to do it, you don't know how to do it.
Do you find on the planning front, just to dig in a little bit of that tactical element, do you find that each individual plans in different ways or needs to think in different ways? Because we're all different creatures of habit, right? No. Or do you find that
is such a good question, man?
There's one structure for everybody? Because I found certain things work for me, certain things don't. But yeah, just a question to ask.
So for those listening, and even the question, man, I think when it comes to planning, it's more of a unique process for each people, but it has a structure to it. So the difference between a script versus structure. So we're not imposing a script. You must do it this way. It's actually, here's a structure with some key principles that will actually cause the person the ability to have the mental willingness to think through the problem, because a lot of people haven't been coached on this stuff. So it's kind of like, it can be quite uncomfortable because people start to move into spaces, and it'd be really nice if we could stay non-emotional, but we're driven by emotion. So when you start teaching people how to do this, the result that we've noticed, we did it with we tested across about 460 of our students that were going through academy over the last couple of years. At the time, our academy got switched off very quickly when COVID hit because it was very face-to-face, all those types of things. But when we were doing all the studies and checking in all the data, just the idea of knowing how to plan was coming up with, just talking about mums, dads, business owners, founders, those types of things. They started to realize just how much time they were fucking wasting.
On the wrong things, or in the wrong areas, or hopping between different things, and juggling.
Yeah.
Yep, got it.
And I think a key word that we could tuck in is something that's synonymous with planning is actually projecting, like a project. Like that's the original word of a project, is how do you throw forward in time the thing you want to achieve. It's like throwing a spear, throwing a rock. That's where it comes from. And so you're the number one project you'll ever build in your own life. So yeah, I can build a business. Yeah, I can go build other people, but I've always got to look after home base. So this is where we would take people through this, and you'd see this huge increase in performance and engagement and discussion. Now, I will add, we're doing all of this discussion under the context of a company code, which is its vision, values, and standards, which most companies think they have, but don't actually have done really well. So that's a whole other, like, that's a really cool discussion. But just so you understand, those categories aren't something we just go start. We actually have to start at the context of, like, why the fuck does this business or this individual exist? And if they don't have a clear answer, we help them get it. So for those listening, if you don't have an answer and you're doing well, that's normal. It's just unconsciously competent. But there's plenty of people out there who are still struggling to figure out, how the fuck do I become the best at what I do in the most effective, efficient way that gives me the best return for my time and energy? And so imagine now doing that across...
It's a great question, though.
10.
If you ask yourself that every day, you're going to give a better answer, aren't you?
Yeah. So then that's the first two. So that's vision and planning. And then the third one, which is really the powerhouse, like absolute powerhouse in this whole process, is team. So people go, but if I'm like an individual and I'm transitioning, I'm in a company or I'm a founder, it's like, yeah, team's everything, man. So you've got a team now. This is the number one force multiplier in any organization. People go, technology. I'm like, no, it's not. There's plenty of tech companies. I mean, I was just looking at the stats. Only 10% of startups, even each year, only 10% succeed, actually make it out alive. And that doesn't mean, like, people go, oh, I made it out alive. I'm like, that's your first year. And then you got your second year, and then you got your third year. And then you got competitors that have more capital, they have a better, clearer vision, they've built a better network, better knowledge base, and they just fucking destroy you. And the thing about tech is it's not like it's real estate that you can sell once it's not working. It's
just a tool.
You can't do it.
That's what people don't realize. It's just the thing you use to do what you do to execute your vision or your plan.
That's it. It's got to be part of that kind of all-encompassing ecosystem and relevance. And so we looked at it from a human-centric point of going, we got the vision, we got the planning in place, and then we go, okay, let's look at the team. How's the team performing? How are they jazzing? How are they interacting? Now that we've looked at the individuals, how do we look at the space between the individuals? And then get them moving and grooving, interacting. And I'm not going to go into huge detail with that kind of stuff because it's a little bit unique. But again, that's still an extension of these assets that we put in place for organizations. And the fourth one, which is like a surprise for most people, it's an obvious one, is training. How much time do people get on training their mind? Not meditation and not mindfulness, because meditation and mindfulness are actually tools. They're not categories. So they're not, even though they're big fields of work and study, they're actually just tools in the toolbox. How have you been trained and encouraged to engage how to use the toolbox that you've got? And it's full of other tools no one even knows about. So all these mental skills, like people, there's a guy named Don Green, who's an American psychologist, and this is a lot of the work that comes out of the company of Collective Mind, who are cutting edge at this stuff. They take really high profile people in power, very important positions, but usually people of power and influence that need to perform or they're screwed. And these guys have been able to turn around sporting teams, people in the edge, CEOs, organizations, because if they can't make clear decisions at the right time, the right place, it actually affects bottom line, trajectory of entire organizations, thousands of people's lives. And so this is where training as the fourth area, as you look at your own team and look at yourself and then look at the people you're around, you go, in an empathetic way, how much training have people been given on their own mind? And if you were to actually give it a full rounded number, it's 0%. Most people, and they go, well, I'm focusing on my sleeping and that's one area, but then how have you been taught how to focus? Intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation, determination, self-concept. There's all these things that it's like, holy crap, I've never heard of that. I'm like, well, that's you, baby. This is you. This is the machine. This is the greatest machine you're ever going to man as a, whatever religion you want to follow or non-religion. This is the greatest vessel you're ever going to be in. It is you. And if we can't get you performing at your best, then what the fuck are you doing?
Got a couple of questions on that. So you described meditation as a tool example. Digging in and understanding the construct of yourself, where does one start? Because that's always an interesting journey, and it starts quite broadly. Someone might be going through some struggle. As during the time they pick up and look at themselves, if things are running swimmingly, sometimes people just want to stay in the position they are. They're happy with that, or they're not. I'd say they're not happy with it, but maybe they're content and they're just on the surface of okay, and okay sometimes is safe. So at a rock bottom state, most people generally look at themselves a little bit more. So where do you start? Because I sort of started a journey myself probably years ago, just looking at one guy, and I attracted to him, and you learn over time that there's many options out there, and many different things and ways of thinking and evolution, but I think you've got to go through each stage. But love to hear your thoughts on
that. First things first, I would say that what you just shared then is really important. So that willingness to start a journey and not really sure entirely why sometimes is really important, because that's kind of like, if I go back to just number one, is like this idea of the vision. Do you have to have, so this is, a vision doesn't always show up visually. It can show up emotively. So, when you get really excited about something and it's really big and you know it's really important, it's almost like if you, and I mean, this sounds a bit different, but if you had like a future version of you that was calling you forward, like that's a good way to put it. Like if you had the best kind of, and everyone can do this, where they kind of have an awareness that when they're on track or off track. And so the question is, why wait to be off track? And so your point is like, I went on this kind of journey of like, you know what, I'm going to go discover some elements of me and learn about me. And I think, you know, a thing that a mentor said to me recently, which I really love, is he goes, the difference between anxiety and excitement is breath.
It's true though. Yeah, very true.
It's true. And the challenge is when we're part of, like, man, this is going to get deep. So if we just remember that everyone's thrown into this world, like you didn't go, you know what, I want to be part of that family, that cohort, and can you inject me when everything's real fucking good? It's, oh shit, I'm here now. And you've been born into a world that's full of infrastructure, technology, cultural frameworks, your own parents. And, you know, as you start to get older, you start to realize just how much your parents were just trying to figure it out as well as you were.
Trying to do that, mate.
So this is kind of like,
when you have kids, especially, you start to realize that they're just trying to do the best they can with what they have. Yeah.
Doesn't that make you grow up quick?
They do.
Did you just go like, what was I doing with myself?
I don't remember time.
Where was I wasting?
I used to do. When I
just wasted a lot of bloody time, I reckon. Yes. That's just another construct.
Yeah, I know. Dude, and exactly. I was like, man, I had no time. Now I have kids. I'm like, what was I thinking? Yeah, what was I thinking? But look, to your point, Andrew, that the reason I say it's a tool is because it's for a context. Is it the context of calming, connecting with yourself? And for those out there who are actually, I say this I'm not a psychologist. Have I studied in it? Yes, but I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I work in performance, not pathology. And based on the assumption that no one's broken, people can actually repair, rebuild, and get on with what's actually important. But some people get really stuck. And I'd say that first things first, if you're a go-getter and you want to become who you want to be and you want to do that stuff, you have to connect with, it's like a cliche, but it's not. You have to connect with your own heart. You really have to be able to connect with your own emotions. Like we think, but it's not the primary. We feel, and then we think. Thinking came much later. Feeling is there, and it's like the thinking-feeling connection, the mind-body connection. People say body-brain. It's not body-brain. It's mind-body, because the brain is like, it's like me saying hand-body. It's the hand's part of the body. The brain's part of the body. It's a feature in the body and a function. So a lot of people, if you want to access the mind, that's why meditation, mindfulness, breathing techniques, accessing the mind is actually access through the body. This is why in defense and different environments, why they say you need to look after your health. Make sure you go for walks. Make sure you go outside. This is, for anyone who's into it, you know, check out Professor Andrew Huberman. He's an amazing mind. He's probably one of the best. He's a leading neuroscientist from, I think, Stanford, and his content is free. He runs an amazing podcast, and he's taken off like wildfire because what he's done is given away all the shit most people put behind paywalls and firewalls for free. And it's cutting edge, it's relevant, anyone can tap into it. You could literally look up the thing you want to solve, and he will have talked about it for 2 to 3 hours. So that's a gift. You know, that's part of the age that we're in. There's this upside to some of the downside, Facebook being the downside. So no tongue in cheek, but so that was I'd say that you've always got to go to context and be open to exploring the unknown, like really step into what could be. And the could be, you're not going to have a clear idea of where it is. And part of understanding and connecting with that vision is being okay that a vision is much like a horizon line. You can only see so far. But if people actually stand and they go out for walks and they go and look at things outside a normal environment, we're going to start, I'm not going to get into it, but this is where you start getting into the science of awe. And this is built into it. The minute
AWE.
Awe, like inspiration, like awesome. AWE, yeah, awe. The science of awe. So you've got awesome. And
you have to be awake and paying attention to be able to notice that. Yes.
Yeah, dude. Key 101. And so these kind of simple categories give anyone anywhere the ability to just quickly check in and go, man, do I even have a vision? Man, I'm not. And by the way, I'm not for everyone. Like I'm a mix of military.
Oh, you're a very
culture
interesting
meets
character
tech.
in my mind. Yeah, the heart connection
So,
piece is interesting. A tool that I use is heart
yeah.
math. One of those areas. Yeah,
Oh,
quite a big fan of that strategy. The science behind that's pretty profound as to the improvement on performance. I think 30-40% in performance improvements. If you want to check that out, if anyone's listening, that's all about heart
hey, that's
breathing
a
and
great recommendation.
connecting to oneself, and it just slows you down. And the quicker you get out of here, the better you are. That's what I've found as I've journeyed through. But it's, yeah, one thing I utilise.
I,
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing that you just reminded me of, Andrew, is that I think there's nothing wrong with aspiration. Like there's this, and I speak for mainly men. I'm not speaking for men. Sorry, that's not what I meant. Speaking as a man with men. Um, the the intrinsic hardware that we carry is actually hunter gatherer kind of like, and that's not everyone. Does every man do that? No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that no, if you take your time to pay attention to where we came from and what normal looks like, this is not a normal environment. We are not in a normal, this is not normal. Like it is not normal to wake up and look at a city of towering monolithic systems when that's not what your biology is tuned to. You can tune it to it, but this is why the majority of our like an example is you look at the top 10 causes for death across the world, I think 7 of them are all lifestyle related, all of them. And even though suicide's ranked 14 in Australia or something like that, the good thing is that you start to realize that people are losing connection to what really matters. Like they really are. This is this meaning crisis that John Vervaeke talks about. This is really important shit. So the cool thing is you don't have to wait for anything. You can start doing it in your own business, your own team, your own family, and it's actually really accessible. But it requires emotion. It requires the ability to connect. It requires empathy. It requires the ability to communicate and talk. Like what you guys are doing is like the coolest way to do that because you're just connecting and creating cool conversations, and who gives a fuck where it goes?
Open
And
to
that's
any
what people need to
conversation. Have
realize.
no idea what this was going to be when we walked into it. We met, and what, 50 minutes ago, and like you said, we could talk for hours. I probably just started. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
yeah, it's just disappeared.
happy to keep going
Quick.
because there's a bit in this.
Yeah, no, guys, yeah. I think I think that's I mean I want to apologize to the listeners. Like I get really excited. I'm very high energy, and I am quite like manic. So if you come into my office, I've got pictures everywhere. I've got drawings and shit, and I'm trying to solve stuff, and I'm working with people. And my biggest lesson is learning to slow down. So that's been, I have a coach, and I think everyone, in reason, should find someone they can really connect with. Not someone that and I want to make something really clear. I don't say go find some wanker online who's going to sell you some bullshit course and get you into their funnel. Go find someone that is going to back the promise about who they can help you become, either professionally or personally. That's the person you want, and you hold them to it. Because you're not paying for just the outcome. You're paying for a process to allow you to become the absolute best without them. That's the point.
Yeah, that without them's the point, and I think I'd question putting the onus on them to do something. I think it's all about you too, so you have to take ownership. Using someone for accountability is maybe what you need, but how do you own? Because how you show up is what the result's gonna be in the end.
Yeah, man, and to that point, it's like I know that we've probably covered a lot in a very short window. It's been, but I think the whole point of connecting with your heart, that means a few things. And if I can share when it comes to planning, as we just step back to step 2, vision planning, team, and then training, there is one final step, and if you miss it, you actually fuck the first 4. But when it comes to planning, it's really, really important that people understand that, when I said a vision is not what you see, but how you see. I'll give you an example if we can just use it real time. If I say to you, our vision is to play a bigger game, and then I turn to you and say, hey, Anthony and Andrew, hey, do you guys want to play a bigger game? What's your answer going to be?
Yeah, always looking to play a bigger game.
It's like,
Makes
yeah,
sense.
let's do
Uh,
it. But what's
mhm,
happened in that is we've kind of
mhm,
agreed to it, but at no stage did you share what you
mm.
were seeing.
Correct. Yep.
So that's in, but
Yeah.
so let's play this game. In organizations, what they tend to do is there's a heavy focus on mechanics without an attention on the manner in which you execute mechanics. So if you look at the news, most of the time when it isn't a violation of someone's sovereignty and it's in the extreme, I'm talking about things like rape, murder. I'm talking about extreme. So let's move all the extreme cases to the side. When you see screw ups in organizations, teams, or startups, it's because they fucked up the manner, not the mechanics. The mechanics is the effect, not the cause. So it's not what you did, it's how you did it. It's not what you said, it's how you said it. It's this kind of subtle, there's another layer sitting there, and everyone's like, oh, what's that? And this is where the manner of something, how the dynamics of how you do something is in values. It's in the values. But you can't possibly know what your values are if you don't know what you ultimately are going towards. Because values are built as systems to say yes or no to. You can't focus on everything. You've only got, your body's got only so much time, so much energy. And you look at your eyes, like it's such a great, you can only put this system at something. And your life becomes whatever you constantly keep paying attention to. So you've got to figure out, okay, why do I keep paying attention to these types of things? And the best way to know what people value is how they act. It's not what they say, it's how they act. And this is the beauty of, like, when you hear people say things like, you don't get results, you just get your standards. And what's happened over time is there's been this real deep connection with organizations and CEOs and founders and creators and podcasters that there's this amazing rush to realize this great potential. And if anyone's in business or in the business of creating and connecting, you're in the business of potential, because the reason we keep getting up and doing what we do is because we believe in the thing coming that we're building. So you're in the game of, how do I make this shit reality? And so you've got to bargain with the future and go, okay, what am I going to say yes to? What am I going to say no to? So I better get clear with this kind of bigger game of, like, what success looks like. But then if you then share what the bigger game is for each of you, you'll say something completely different, but it'll be fucking awesome. But then if we step through the statements of what you each say, I mean, you want to play the game? Do you want to just test it? So if I say, what's the bigger game? Like, just, you can make it up as if it's real, though. Don't make it up like it's bullshit. Like, if you say, yeah, the bigger game for me is this is what I'd like to do.
For me, it's impacting more founders. Yeah, so how do we impact 10,000 at once? That's a big game. We're micro, so we play little games where we're helping individual businesses along the journey, but how do we scale that? So that's a big game that I see in the context of what we do, and that's where the podcast stems in and sort of helps us get some more material out. But then how do you drive more impact across a bigger environment with more people impacting more founders, more entrepreneurs? That's the bigger game for me.
Anthony, so just out of curiosity,
It's better than how I've worded it, so it's a good
how
thing.
did you feel hearing that, just out of curiosity?
I'm very specific and to the point, so I would have just said, have more people, more clients, more software delivered, and reach more people, and I would have left it at that.
But how good is that? Like, you can imagine, like, you guys crosshatch now, where I want to kind of point out, this is why the team element is so important. So imagine if you've got people who then share the vision, share their concept of what they're seeing, you put in place this ability to plan and execute together. And we have these assets that do that. So planning is the category, not the thing. It's like the thing you do. And then you come together, and not only did you now see what each other sees, you've shared perspectives, you've shared language, and you've shared energy. It's like when one person shares, you get two things. That's the beauty. You get to have your thing, and you now got their thing. So if you've got a team of 10, everyone's now got 10 things. And they've not just updated each other, they've improved their own perspective if they're doing proper team dynamics and interacting. And it's not about, by the way, I'm not saying everyone needs to agree, diversity, inclusion, equity, that kind of, I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying that some ideas are shit, but if you don't share it and you don't then include it and integrate it, you can't ever know that. So a lot of people are in organizations at times where they're not sure how to share and those types of things. So a lot of these founders are actually overworking because they haven't actually tapped into the most powerful economic engine that anyone's got, which is their brain. So this is like the work, this is the future of any organization won't just go to how much cash you've got, but how well you're tapping into the cognitive ability of each of your members individually and collectively, because that's the powerhouse. So even though Anthony, yours was short and dot point, that just comes down to different thinking styles, which are beautiful, and Andrew is the same, and you bring that together. But me listening to that, I was instantly like, this makes so much sense. So you know, you get this kind of epiphany of like things seem to fall in place. So I've always thought myself very lucky. Things always work out for me. That's always been my attitude. Even though I've had some really rough patches, I've always gone, oh yeah, it's raining, we're good. Got that, snowflake, like I'm drinking, I'm good to go. It's just, I think some people are like, I hate this is fucking shit, I'm covered in mud. I'm like, I don't know, everyone's different. It depends on what you want to focus on. But to your point, guess what I absolutely love doing, guys? I love helping founders. That's like something I loved what you just said. I was like, man, how cool would it be to help these founders because they forge futures?
Yeah, that's the fun part. They're creating something new. They're looking to impact. They're looking to make a bigger difference. And I feel like we're in business. We serve all different people, clients, customers. But yeah, the things that really drive me are the ones that are looking to just push the boundaries a little bit and create something bigger, better, and get more out of themselves, their business, their people, help more customers, etc. That's what drives me in the morning to get up. So it's about how do we help more. We're a team of 35, which is a decent team. It's growing, but for me, we're still only impacting this tiny little slither of what's out there. So, isn't
it interesting though? You go like, it's cool to then walk into the challenge that you've got now, where you're like, it's so much bigger than what it used to be. But the awareness, like, it's almost like what you've described then is that your awareness is exceeding your actual reach. But there's actually a beautiful quote, which is I don't want to bastardize. What you just said is exactly this quote, and it was along the lines of your reach should always exceed your grasp for what are the heavens for. That is exactly like that there. The distinction of like what a vision is it will always exceed your grasp, but it's that it creates this kind of compelling dynamic around, I want to do, it's like an artist. No artist has ever gone, I'm done. I've done my picture. Good to go. There's this kind of, I'm in this process where it's not parasitic, but it's empowering. And the beauty of something that you guys are tapping into is that that's a human process. Everyone can tap into that. That's kind of like what started me in this company was you want to help founders build a
it's all about the team. And
because the
thing that I learned when we were I don't know, it was 14 years ago now. There was 3 of us in a room. Went down to 2 because one of us didn't work. It's like trying to do everything on our own accord, and then as you get more people around you, it's about letting go. I found that a challenge. It's about letting go of everything that you used to do, and bringing people on the journey and enabling them and empowering them to make decisions. It's about learning those new habits because as I think people that are listening, they might be 1 or 2 people. And then if you get to 10, 20, 30, let's hope that's where you get to and grow to, if that's what your vision is, that you need to let go and you need to change and evolve as you move forward. And that's...
Let go of all the shit you don't like doing and focus on the stuff you do like doing because you'll do that better all the time.
Yep. Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, it's especially difficult when you start out. You are doing nearly everything. You are all things to all people, and then eventually you start to refocus. And it's very normal for founders. And I don't want to take away from this that there's a big difference between founders and CEOs because, and not in a better or bad way, but when you've got people who actually build companies from zero up to something, it's a totally different dynamic. And then the CEOs are really important as a function of ownership and responsibility when you've got an existing company that's running, because you need someone to run it, because some founders are shit CEOs. I actually, even though I've got the title of CEO for whatever boutique consulting brand that we've got and the companies we look after, I'm more a founder than a CEO. I have a business partner who's he's a great CEO, but not really a founder. That's not his thing, but he's brilliant at what he does. And then we've got other company partners, and man, one of them is absolutely a CEO, but also a brilliant founder. And he just said, I love building large organization stuff, but he goes, Tim, I'm in a different stage in life. And that's the beauty, is at each level there's an awareness of what's my next level, like what's my next stage that I'm moving to, and as I say that, the really important thing is stop pursuing something you think you need to pursue, because then you can forget about what's really important. And this comes back to things like connecting with your own heart. And I say this sincerely, guys, because I'm gonna blow smoke at my own ass. Even though my marketing skills are somewhat questionable, it's not my strength, because I don't have a profile online. I haven't really paid any attention to it because, to be frank, I'm too fucking busy working with clients. The last thing I need to do is have a whole bunch of new fish come in when I can't look after them. So we were a heavily referral-based business, but I'm working with and have worked with some extremely high-profile individuals, and it's really sad to see that after 10, 20-year careers, they're quite miserable. And that's not always. Now, people then hear that and they say, oh, see, money doesn't buy happiness. And I'm like, shut up. Money does buy happiness. Most people I know that have a fucking jet ski are having a good time. So people who say money doesn't buy happiness, that's not true and it's absolute. But you've got to look at it with distinction. Money helps you arrive at problems in style. So it's this ability to then go, money is not an end game, but a middleman or a middle woman, whatever way you want to say it, to help you solve resource, problems. Right? And if you've got exactly, it's a resource. Money only amplifies more of what you've got. So if you're having a shit time, you just keep spending money to solve it, you're going to have more of a shit time. And I know plenty of people that live well below their means but make heaps of money, and then they still go, I'm not sure what to do with it, but it's there, and I'll probably just give it all away, because they like sitting in their library at home, or they want to go back to uni. Like this super simple, I like it, kind of stoic kind of way of living. And the challenge would be is that even though I'm making a lot of this sound quite, what's the word I'd look, analytical at times, and maybe simple, because I can, you and I can all talk about it. It's a process and a journey. It takes time. Like, this is the joke that I used to crack with some of these professors overseas, is there's a reason why we call it embodiment, but there's this huge obsessive compulsive thing going on in our culture about enheadment. Like, there's a big difference between people are usually getting it up here, but they're not embodying it. So people know what to do, but then don't do it. So they're not getting it past their neck. So this is why people are getting so anxious, is it's like, oh, I'm just fucking, there's so much going on. I've got so much to do. I need to do this. And I look at this Instagram chick and this Instagram guy, and he looks good and she looks good, and I never have. And it's like, guys, it's bullshit. It's all bullshit. Like, the biggest distraction you've got now is this giant, like, fucking sphere of bullshit and noise, and you're being limpidly hijacked. And if we go back to vision, your vision is not to sit there wasting your fucking time on social media. Like, and this is this subtle, like, everyone's got a little Jiminy Cricket that sits with them. It's like, hey, but go back to base, connect with yourself, and start working through what are the things that I need to do here right now. And I know this, like, for anyone listening, it's like, oh, I've heard this stuff before, but I'm like, you know what? People have heard this before, but they're still not fucking doing it, because they keep thinking it needs to be something really complex, really fucking technologically amplified, and but it's actually really simple, because that's what's got most of us to where we are today, is just doing the basics. And then when you do the basics, all the advanced cool shit starts to come. But it doesn't rely on some big overarching secret source. There is no secret source. The only secret source people have got is that most people are still hiding. Like, that's what founders can't do. They have to fucking become who they need to be. They have to lead teams. They have to inject their own personality. And you can do that as a team member, an employee. And if you can't do it in your organization, my question is then, what do you want to do? What have you got to bring into that organization? What conversations do you need to inspire and engage with your team leaders? And you're always in a trade for time. So it's like, what are you bartering with? Are you just paycheck to paycheck? Are you just living like week to week, month to month? Like, and I mean, there is some people that are actually unfortunately in that situation. Hence why, if a founder or a business owner or a great leader or a team, whatever you want to call it, manager, is always in service of others. But the best way to help serve others is through being the best version you can be, and also know that there's no such thing as perfection. It's just a process. And I will add real quick, the last 5th step that is the one that everyone is screwing up more than the first 4. Because if you just do number 5, if you do number 5, you did my hands here, sorry, I'm like showing you one thumb. If you just do number 5, the first 4 actually fall into place really well, and number 5 is recovery.
We don't give ourselves time to stop, do we? Breathe. Yes. Breathe.
No, people don't stop. They don't recover. They don't sleep well. They're all too busy being busy to be busy in order to be busy for the next busy. And it's like, if, and it goes back to things like the name's just forgot me. It's like the unexamined life isn't worth living. It's like, why not just stop? Like, just stop for fucking 5 minutes, mate. And just write down what's some stuff you want to work on. And then that 5 minutes turns into 10 minutes. And now I'm talking about little tools and strategies, but these are all things that come nested under your values. It's like, once you know your values, not the ones that you want, the ones you need, big distinction. Everyone goes, oh, I'm all about health. And I'm like, well, you don't look it. Like, let's be honest. It's like, there's nothing wrong with having that value, but what's the standards that you need to honor so that you can embody that fucking vision and idea of who you want to be? And then all the cool shit flows from there.
In that, I've got one question because we're going way over, but anyway, it all stems around team and then training. Training people around a system. How do you go about it? So I'm imagining there's a little bit of thinking about training people about who they are, who they're looking to become, not just around this is how I do X, Y, Z in the job. Yeah. It's not about the process. It's a little bit more beyond that. So how do you encourage that in a team, especially people that are questioning that angle, if you know what I mean? Because I think everyone will have their own sort of beliefs, systems around where they are, where they're at. They may be good people in terms of delivering process, but how do you train them or encourage them around these different areas and categories?
So you've got got business as usual, day-to-day actions, outcomes. We don't use KPIs. KPIs are there, but we don't instill that in companies because we use a different process. It's like KPIs with an extra axis of just awareness, so that it's embedded culturally. Creates a really deep level of ownership, and I think that's what you would be looking at when you're looking at mobilizing. Because really, what you're wanting, and if I can correct me if I'm wrong, is instead of telling people what to do, you're actually mobilizing them in such a way that they're immediately engaged in the short and long term around what we're actually building as a team. So there's this kind of subtle, provocative, like they want to do things with you. They want to create things. They come up with ideas, and people go, "Oh, that seems like a dream." People can love the company as much as you. That's a crock of shit. Like, I know Gary Vee said that, and Gary Vee is 20, 40, 50 times bigger than what I've built. But I know plenty of really smart people at the top that say shit that just doesn't make sense. And I agree with a lot of things that man says, but one of the things is that people will never love the business as much as you. That's crock. I know plenty of people who love companies more than the founder at times, and they just fall in love with it. They love it. They want to be there. They want to live it. They want to breathe it. They get tattoos for it. They're just part of it, and that's that need to want to belong to something that matters. At some level, you're gonna no matter what you do as an owner or a founder, you're gonna lose people because they are on their own journey, and you're part of theirs. Whereas we have to be very mindful as leaders and founders that you don't own people. You own the vision and the mission to help mobilize those minds and those bodies, but you don't own the people. If you want to own the people, you have to help them own the outcome as well. That doesn't mean, I don't mean equity, I don't mean control. I mean, if they've got a good idea of the problem they're solving and the impact it's going to have, and they love that, they're going to own part of the problem picture. And that training, then it becomes very aware where they need the training. And this is, and to your point, Andrew, it's very difficult when you start looking at really large, let's say enterprise. So we're working with a partner who's working with a client that it's 100,000 staff.
Yeah, no,
It's
that's
ridiculous.
an impossible
So
problem.
you can't
Correct.
solve that. It's huge. Whereas our strength at the moment is we look at small groups of like, say, 10 all the way through to about 400 staff. So even 100 staff sounds a lot, but it is, but it isn't, because the dynamics is much the same. You got a team of 20 to 25, 30, and then you get to about 120, 130. When it gets to over 150, the dynamics start. You've got multiple senior managers and leaders. So you've got the hierarchy starts to expand. And when I say hierarchy, I mean that from a decision-making kind of command and control. But the training is always going to be in the context of, say, getting people to move and mobilize, is that you've got to come back to what's the problem we're solving? How do we actually measure success? But then empowering each of the line leaders to actually identify, so I'm actually in my role to do this one thing. So it's context. It always has to be based on context. Because you get a lot of people who are doing a whole bunch of training that doesn't actually make any sense. And it's usually, and somehow you guys know this. So they spend a shitload of time getting all these training qualifications and things that actually just are not necessary, or they've been put in place purely to avoid risk. But okay, cool. That might work in a bank. We don't work with banks. It's one of those problems when you're working with a startup or a well-established startup that's moving through its grooves and its stages and its funding, which can also be a problem because a lot of funding can create a very false sense of success because they've got all the money, and money can hide problems very quickly. As I know you guys have probably
seen
discussed
many problems in that world. We're exposed to it all the time in terms of the challenges, the pitfalls of raising money. I think there's some pitfalls in that too. I think sometimes it's some blood, sweat and tears into what you're doing can serve you better sometimes. I feel like you can blow money pretty quickly because you make crappy decisions because the money's there. So, yeah.
I did that. I definitely did that, Andrew. At one stage when we were developing the software, I was like, yes, we need this. It's really important. And then I was like, man, how did I think that was important? That was dumb.
You'd be surprised.
That was so dumb. And I was like, that set me back a good year and a half, 2 years. We were very lucky. Mate, and I remember calling and connecting with the R&D department, and I was like, I love you. You saved me. Without you, I'd be dead. Yes. Like, that's good to know, but is the project successful? Well, like, yes. It's a lot, and its heart is still beating thanks to you. So it was a dreadfully good experience, especially in that early stage. You get like obsessed, like this is gonna work, and then when you start unpacking it, you're like, we're way off. We're so fucking off.
But you don't have all the answers though, do you? At the time, you thought that was the right path you were going down and the right decision.
No.
But, sometimes it doesn't always play out the way we imagine. That's the reality.
If anything, no. Mm-hmm. It attracted more of the right team. So where I started to ask for help and realized that I just suck at certain things, like I'm not a good product owner. I hold the vision and the idea, and then I partner with a good product owner who then helps me find an interim COO who then could understand, like, oh, hey, this is what you're doing. And then we connected with the right CFOs around the place who they'd ask a whole different host of questions, but because they weren't emotionally caught up in it, they were just asking really blunt questions. And we were just very lucky that we had such a great network to begin with. Like, and when I say to begin with, I mean, it took 5 or 6 years to build that network. So we had access to some really successful tech startups, and the founders I just reached out to and was like, hey, what the fuck do you do here? And then I was like, oh, dude, do this, don't do this. And I'm like, okay. And they were just unreal, like, help. Like, and that comes back to network. But I didn't connect with them because they had something. I connected with them because we became mates and we shared a common set of values about helping and serving, and a bit like what we're doing. It's kind of like we don't really know. We just hung out, trained together, worked together. Even when some of them, like I know one of them failed really bad, but we all kind of chipped in to help him in whatever way good. I ended up coaching him. The other guys, I don't know what they did. They ended up buying shit for him and stuff. And then he went back to the game and he's done really well. So it's kind of like, your friends, your team.
You're not in it alone. Let's put it that way.
So
if you try to do it alone, it's never going to work. That's the reality. So
no. And look, we're still at a stage where we haven't gone out and sought funding. We haven't done any Series A or any of that kind of stuff. We put it on the table a few times, but we didn't want to lose equity or control too soon. We really wanted to push ourselves to the point that we turned into skeletons, that we knew that we had something, rather than really testing the metal of what we had. And we knew it worked, so we were working it because we were doing it manually.
That's a positive, If you've
we were doing it
tested
manually.
something,
So the system
some people
we built
write a PowerPoint up and then they attempt to raise big money, and some do, depending on area, and they've got nothing, and they're just flying by the seat of their pants.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's what we were noticing as well. There was this kind of weird. What we were noticing was this general like building things that weren't actually relevant to the market's current state or even future state. We just went, it was just an accident. I said to my partner at the time, I said, we were on a flight and I said, mate, we're fucked if we keep doing this manually. Like I don't have the capacity to be looking after this many people. Like I'm going to die. And he's like, yeah, but you're making really good money and we can like hire people. I'm like, you just missed the point. Like this is not going to work. He goes, well, let's get an LMS. I'm like, LMSs don't work, dude. They don't hold people accountable and give them clear maps in their context. And he's like, oh yeah. I'm like, fuck, what are we going to do? And then we started looking at off the shelf, like commercial stuff off the shelf. We tried to hybridize.
We tried everything and everything.
CRMs and rebuilt backends, and none of it worked. We tried everything before we spent any money. And then when we did spend the money. It took a long time to save that money and then risk it, because I had to, the choice was, do I buy my first home or do I spend this on this idea that I've tested manually through tons of people that seems to be working, and it was fucking frightening. Like, it really was. And
it never ends though, and you'll find that the process never ends because your thinking evolves, your feedback from customers evolve, your business, your people evolve, your processes evolve. They don't stay stagnant. Nothing does. So your product doesn't stay stagnant. That's the reality of product development. No. It's always going to move like everything else. Everything changes. That's the only consistent. So it has to change, has to evolve. Otherwise, you get left behind. Same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to that point, it feels like we definitely had to change a few things very quickly when we started realizing the audience that this best suited. So we were originally trying to build a platform that could enable the integration and the activation of cultures. But what we ended up actually building was an amazing coaching management tool. Like, it was just that, because we went, wait a minute, you got leaders. What are leaders doing? What are managers doing? What are people doing? And we looked out there, and there was no platform. There was big promises, but no actual delivery. And we went the other way around. We were getting feedback from people going, "This is, fucking really useful. Like, this is great." But there's no website. There's just amazing tool, and we didn't even know about it. And we went, "Yeah, we
pretty like stealth. I'm not word of mouth is
marketer. Like, I'm still working that. I'm like John Wick, we kind of keep it. We pass a few coins around, meet up at funny places. Like, I wish that was the case. It does happen, but it's not as cool as John Wick. So, but yeah, no, we're going through that stage now, polishing it off. We've got like 2 or 3 months left in the final sprint before it launches in its final version. So we had an MVP beginning of the year, but that MVP was like, oh, it's missing something. And then we had a whole bunch of clients hanging off it. And then we just said, they're happy with it. So before we bring any more volume, we're like, let's just get this bit right, because I do not want to get anyone on it that's going to see
30 words or less. What
working.
Is the platform? What does it do for people? What's the vision? Where are you going?
So that's a really good question. I'd probably say
put you on the spot there, haven't I?
You bastard. Yeah, it's a good one, because obviously I'm going to
like the strategy.
Because these don't count as words. These don't count. The easiest way to put it is it's transformation at scale. It's how do we transform together? And the other key aspect is it's a it's an asset protection system for founders and owners in their business. So it's a big one. They've put their life on the line to build that thing, and it only takes 1 or 2 people to screw it up. Like, that's the nice way to put it. So why not make every single one of those individuals as awesome as they can be to help build what you're building? So it was, it's a tool to help founders and owners transform their people and business. That was it. In real time, the easiest way from a military perspective is it was like the Blue Force Tracker, which is like a mission planning and execution tool that the Australian Defence Force uses. We built that for founders and owners because we know that you guys will know this. Founders and owners just go, fuck, if my team doesn't change and they complain. And I'm not saying they all do this, but they all subtly hint at it. They're like, if only my people X, Y, Z. If only they did this. If only they did that. If only blah, blah, blah.
It's all about
blah,
focus,
blah.
though,
And
isn't
so
it? Yeah.
we just went, well, that can be solved. Yeah. So we went, how do we help people focus, act, and grow?
And is it platform-based only? Is there coaches involved? How does it come together?
Yeah, it's a software at the moment. It's a software with a service, not software as a service. It's still I would still say it's about a year and a half off being a software as a service. And the type of clients that it really works well with are those looking to scale and grow their team. Like it's like, how do you manage and coordinate teams that are moving quick while removing people problems?
Been a great chat. We can keep going, but I think we might cut it there. We'll get you back on the podcast at some point, especially when the product launches a bit more. Let's focus in on that and spend some time the next 3 or 4 months when you're ready. Let's talk a bit more of that and just put focus on how that journey went, because it sounds like there's been plenty in that and plenty of people can take away from a learning perspective too. A bit of a retrospective. Yeah,
that's a big
story. When you're ready, and let's do it, because I feel like there's going to be a lot in that too. Tim, anyone wants to reach out, connect, where's the best place to find you?
Honestly, the best place is just going to nextlevel.com.au, Bishop at nextlevel.com.au, get me direct. I answer my own emails. Just forgive any delay. 48 hours, I'll get you back to you. And a little bit of Instagram. I don't really hang out on Facebook at all, but I'm on Instagram, and LinkedIn's good. LinkedIn, I've got heaps of stuff going with LinkedIn, so any one of those is great. And yeah, like, best thing to do is just a conversation. I cannot and will not work with someone that we can't scale and grow or look after.
Awesome, Tim. No, really, thanks for coming on and sharing your perspectives. There's quite a bit in that. Sure. And probably an episode people might have to unpack and listen to a couple of times. That's my thoughts. No, I appreciate it, mate.
That's just me in a nutshell. So I had actually a double shot of coffee, which I don't think.
Very good, man. And
Well, guys, I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thanks for making the time to jump on. It's actually been awesome to hear more. I'm really wanting to connect with you guys later after the podcast, because I'd like to really know more about what you guys actually stand for, because what you guys have communicated really stood out a lot more than just the website.
Always does.
So
we're the face.
I'd really love to catch up with you guys.
That's once you meet the face, that's who we are and what we stand for. We're very different, as you can probably tell. But I think we're a marriage made in heaven. We used to argue a lot, and then we realised that we're actually good to actually challenge each other. So now we just play off each other, and we know how we work. We've been together for 14 years in business, so background is we started.
You did say
honors.
He was still
finishing started the business.
Masters, were you? Honors, I think. Yeah, and I wrapped up and walked into a business straight out of uni. We had no bloody idea what we were doing. Spent 5 years probably twiddling our thumbs and trying to figure out how the hell do we do something, add some value, and the rest is sort of history. And now it's around how do we keep evolving. That's my take.
No office anymore.
We're Melbourne based. Awesome, I was checking out where you were, because I definitely want to go for a beer or a lunch or something. But
mate, for sure. Well, I'm in and out of Melbourne sometimes in Sydney, but man, I'm based out of Brisbane, and easy.
Yeah, sounds good.
It'd be worth catching up and learning more.
No, appreciate it, and everybody listening in.
Thanks for
enjoy
the
the
time,
podcast, and check out
Thank you.
Tim, and I hope you enjoy the conversation there. Thanks, Tim, for joining us, mate.